Okay, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum. Before we start and go to roll call, let me just read a statement that we have here. Before we begin, I want to remind the Public Safety Finance Strategic Support Committee members and members of the public to follow our code of conduct at meetings. This includes commenting on specific agenda items only and addressing the full body. Public speakers will not engage in a conversation with the chair, council members, or staff. All members of the Public Safety Finance Strategic Support Committee, staff, and the public are expected to refrain from abusive language. Repeated failure to comply with the code of conduct, which will disturb, disrupt, or impede the orderly conduct of this meeting, may result in removal from the meeting. This meeting of the Public Safety Finance Strategic Support Committee will now come to order, and the clerk can please call the roll.
Batra,
Present.
Torres, Kamei,
Here.
Doan,
Present.
and Jimenez.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, first item, well, we're on B, I should say. We're going to go to review of the work plan. We're not going to take public comment on the review of the work plan, but if anyone has any questions as it relates to the review of the work plan, I'll entertain that now. Hopefully you had a chance to look at it. Give it just a few seconds. Okay, I don't see any questions. We'll move on to the consent calendar. And before we entertain a motion for consent or questions or anything that needs to be pulled, just go ahead and think about that. We'll go to public comment.
Paul?
Yes, Paul Soto for the Horseshoe. I'd just like it stated for the record why you did not accept public comment on the last item. I would just like that stated for the public record, because that's necessary. Secondly, on this item, I would like to know if you have any assessment done in terms of the investments that the city is making, and that if there's any kind of ethical or moral standard that you're using in terms of where you invest. And here's why I'm asking the question. You're gonna have a proliferation of, because of the immigration issues, you're gonna have a proliferation of immigration detention centers that is going to proliferate as a result of that to accommodate that immigration issue. My questions are around what types of investments. Do they have any technologies that the city is investing in that would support that work? Are they investing in private prison industries or any of their supporting vendors? You know, these are legitimate questions to ask, because if we're going to talk about morality and talk about ethics and equity and talk about that we're a sanctuary city and that we support immigration, then we have to be morally and ethically responsible in where we're investing our money, because money equals power. And if you're investing in industries that is enhancing the power and augmenting the power of industries that are supporting the immigration policies by creating detention centers, then there's a contradiction in where the money goes with the city. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Blair?
Hi, Blair Beekman. I agree with Paul's words, a description of why exactly you've dismissed public comment on the work plan agenda items. I hope there can be some clarification as to why. I can kind of meld I had important public comment on the previous item that I can meld into this, into the, financial third quarter reporting. But an explanation would be nice. Thank you. I wanted to speak a thank you that you're working on procurement issues and disparity study issues. To involve the accountable practices with technology in the future of procurement practices is really important. And I hope meaningful for yourselves in how to consider third quarter financial reporting. And to note that with, I think we've had some pretty serious warnings and signs that we've had to very much prepare for some sort of natural disaster by at least the end of this year, or if not by the end of this year, in the next couple of years. It's been my feeling that we don't have to, a natural disaster isn't coming in by the end of this year, but we're not fully certain of that. And to make that clear to the public in preparation, good practices is important. And so I would have liked previous public comment on the previous item as to why the item has been dropped and not to return about future disaster annual reporting. That it's an important subject that I think we need to make clear to each other, just where we're at. I think there's a bit of a hopeful outlook, but I'm not fully sure. To have that sort of reporting at this time, it's really important. And good luck how to do that to make the process clear for ourselves. As a community process, it is public safety, guys. Thanks.
Back to the committee.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and entertain a motion or questions related to the consent calendar. And I don't see any council member on my list, so if I can get a motion to move us
I
along.
would so move.
I'll second.
Great, we have a motion and a second. Get a roll call vote, please.
Batra,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
Kamei,
Aye.
Doan,
Aye.
and Jimenez.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to the reports to committee. D1 is the employee travel expense audit report. Joe and the team, if you can come up, please.
Good afternoon, Joe Royce, City Auditor. I'm here with Abella Obi and Adrian Perez from my office for our audit employee travel expenses. Additional training can enhance compliance with the city's travel policy. Also in the box is Rick Bruno from the Finance Department and Rob Lloyd from the City Manager's Office. City staff travel for various work-related reasons, such as for training, conferences, or representing the city on the city's business. The city's employee travel policy provides guidance for authorization of employee travel, as well as reimbursement and payment of travel expenses. Prior to COVID, annual employee travel expenses exceeded $1 million annually. It fell quite a bit in COVID, of course, but has since begun to come back. In fiscal year 21-22, travel expenses total over $529,000. Some departments travel more than others. In fiscal year 21-22, 3 departments made up 55% of travel expenses. That was the police department, the fire department, and the airport. The objective of this audit was to review employee travel expenses for appropriateness and compliance with the city's policies and procedures. This is the 4th in a series of audits that the Office of the City Auditor has conducted on travel expenses over the past 15 years. We have just one finding, in that travel expenses generally complied with the city's travel policy, but additional training may be necessary. There are several layers of approval for travel requests and reimbursement, both with department travel and procurement card coordinators, and finance staff, ensuring travel is appropriate and complies with city policy. However, some exceptions were noted during our review that call for additional training for staff. We found that departments didn't always provide all required supporting documentation for travel expenses. In our sample of travel reimbursements, we noted several travel packets were missing some required supporting documentation, and some travel statements were not always complete. There are other areas where the administration should also clarify expectations for travel coordinators or department staff. These include travel purchased through a procurement card or a P card, expectations for economical travel, and the timeliness of travel packet submissions and others. We had just one recommendation: to ensure employee travel complies with the city's employee travel policy. Administration should require that department travel and P card coordinators complete mandatory training on the travel policy and associated processes. I do want to point out that finance does provide an annual training on the travel process. However, it is not mandatory currently, and finance has not been tracking attendance over time. Also, because of turnover, several travel coordinators with whom we talked with were new to their roles, and it's not clear whether they had received that training. With that, I'd like to thank the Finance Department, the City Manager's Office, the City Attorney's Office, and the Department Travel Coordinators with whom we worked for their time and insight during the audit process. The administration has reviewed the information report and responses shown in the yellow pages. I ask that you accept the report and cross-reference to the June 6th meeting to the City Council. Happy to answer any questions. Now I'll turn it over to Rick for the administration's response.
Thank you, Joe. Good afternoon, committee chair, committee members. My name is Rick Bruno, the Director of Finance. The Finance Department thanks Joe and his team for working with us on this audit. The audit was conducted fairly, effectively, efficiently, and professionally, and the audit recommendation is reasonable. Overall, the Finance Department is satisfied with the results of the audit and agrees with the recommendation to broaden the audience and frequency of travel expense training. Going forward, we will include P-card coordinators in the annual training and ensure that new travel and P-card coordinators complete training when they assume their roles. I'll also share that the Finance Department is completing user acceptance training or user acceptance testing on a business process automation project, which is to move our pre-travel travel request forms to an online workflow by the end of this month. There's a second phase to that project, which will then be developed and implemented to move the post-travel request forms online as well, and that's anticipated to go live before the end of the calendar year. Moving it online will help with a lot of the documentation issues that were identified. It will ensure that information is attached and any other policy changes that require approvals will be captured within the system and in one place so we can have that on record and maintained. With that, again, thanks to Joe and team for supporting the audit, and we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Joe and team. We're going to go to the public first. Any public comment on the item?
Yeah. Paul?
Yes, Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. Quit ripping us off is basically simple. It's very simple. Once again, I thank Mr. Royce for his auditing. It's just like, God, I wonder what the city would be like without, if we did not have objective overview of what's going on in the city. This has nothing to do with training. Quit lying. This has everything to do, over $1 million, seriously, for travel. None of you are that important. You're not that important. And going over to all these different cities, and I bet you have the best motels. Oh, no, not a motel. You don't sleep in a motel. You sleep in a hotel. That's where you're at. And I bet you your meals, it's wonderful, wonderful. Well, I take exception to that because that's my money. That's my money. And I don't want to come back next year because I'm going to be here next year at this time. So I don't want to come back next year.
Blair?
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Sorry, Paul got muted somehow, or his connection ran out. Hopefully, he can come back and finish what he was trying to say, if possible. I wanted to comment. The auditor mentioned how these travel funding issues doesn't cut into overtime issues, I guess is what he mentioned something of. I just wanted to, it reminded me just of a thank you to the work of Joe Roy at this time, that he is working on overtime issues of policing, police issues that I think has been really interesting and important, and that it may not be the whole world, but we're taking steps to address the overtime issues of policing, and a thank you for that, just a real thank you. And it's from that, in this sort of reporting, if there's any way that can help, this can help with the police overtime issues, how to better address the overtime issues. Good luck in those efforts, and thanks for this report today.
Paul put his hand back up. Can I go back to him he had 30 seconds left?
Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you. I would just like to end my comments with thanking Mr. Royce once again. The work that you do is critically important because I don't have the means by which, I don't have access to the information that you do. And so you provide me as a public citizen that has been actively involved in these meetings for over 6 years. 6 years. Every single week, I listen to all the lies and the deception and the duplicity and the just complete bordering on sociopathic rhetoric. And you and your reports give a very objective view that actually affirms the position of the citizen when we're calling it out. So thank you.
Back to the committee.
Thank you. And I would just first say that I join the members of the public in saying how great you are, Joe. So thank you very much for that, for all the work that your team does. And I find very objective and very informative and helps us make decisions. So I'm not sure if the departments like it, but we very much appreciate it. So we're going to go, we have some speakers. We're going to go to Councilmember Batra first. And before you start, Councilmember Batra, I would just say that just whoever makes the motion, just remember we got to cross-reference it to the city council. So just wanted to put that out there. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Okay. I think I too voice that in the short time I've seen the reports from our auditor, city auditor, they're very objective. They bring out the right kind of data, and they're very readable. They're not a mumbo jumbo. So I really appreciate that, and I think it gives the public the confidence that the city is operating properly, their money is being spent correctly, and they're receiving the right services. So I do appreciate all the work you do in winning the confidence of the people. I do have a couple of clarifications on this report. You, in your audit, did not find any violation of the policy because it said that there was a compliance. There were some papers were not properly filed, but there was no non-compliance, even a single case.
That's a great question. So if a very strict reading, there could be non-compliance if a form isn't completely filled out, what have you. I would describe it as what we were describing as maybe exceptions that we were identifying in our testing were at the individual level are fairly insignificant, but it was kind of the breadth of things we were seeing, kind of the prevalence of incompleteness or some other elements like late bookings, things of that nature. It's kind of the breadth of issues which led us to the recommendation about training. If we were seeing something that was a bit more significant, we would have recommendations to address those. So that would didn't completely answer your question, but hopefully it kind of understand what we were getting at.
No, I just wanted to highlight it for the public that there was really procedural paperwork, but there was no real violation. Money didn't get spent the wrong way, and that's where I think public is going to be concerned about. We need to be concerned about the paperwork and the process and all that for documentation, but public's primary concern is that we use our money, their money, properly, and that's the confidence you've given us. The second aspect is about the process development or the automation. Is that going to make it that most of the paperwork get collected by the automated system and some attachment, which you obviously have to have the expense, the hotel and all those kind of things, they'll get scanned copies will get loaded, and hence no movement of big stacks of papers around.
That's correct. All the documentation will likely be scanned, receipts will be scanned, folios will be scanned and uploaded as part of the reimbursement request.
Okay, so that not only improves our process, but actually makes it more efficient, a lot less work to do. So excellent, and storage becomes easier because it's all digital now. Okay, so great. Chairman, how do I make the motion here? You want me to?
Well, you can or you can't. You don't need to just yet, but you can. So you would just make a motion to accept the report and cross-reference it to the full city council.
Accept the report with the cross-reference to,
Second?
okay?
Okay, great. I think we have a few more speakers. Councilmember Duan.
Thank you, Vice. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, the department, for the great report and especially helping us to stay within the realm of the laws and within the boundary that we need to be. I just got a quick question. You stated that 55% of the travel costs came from the police and fire. Is that correct?
Plus, and the airport, they're the top three.
Top three, okay. And let's say between that 55%, within that, how many percent came from police and how many percent came from fire?
So the largest department with travel is police department. And, give you an example, the most common types of things we're seeing are things like training, conferences. Police department has a different bucket of travel, which is around investigatory work, extraditions, things like that. So they have a broader type of, we'll see a broader type of travel with the police department than other departments. Fire, I believe, was, I think a lot of what we were seeing was more on the trainings and things of that nature.
All right, thank you. That's all I have.
And Vice Mayor Kamei with a few questions.
Thank you. I too echo the good work that your department does on informing us. And I know that you follow up on these recommendations. It would seem to me that, and I guess I would ask, in terms of implementation, once it goes to council, how quickly can it be implemented? I mean, it seems like such a simple thing where we could put it as part of the P-card training, as part of new employee training. And I mean, I don't know, like, where is the best time frame, but my thought is sooner rather than later, just for clarification. And if there are those who had never had the training or had been around and perhaps forgot, you know, I just wonder, when is the implementation going to happen?
Thank you for the question. It will be immediate. In each year, as part of our year-end training with the finance department, we cover a multitude of topics, one of them being our travel policy training. We typically hold that in the first week of June, and we're preparing those training materials now. We already have a roster of all of the travel coordinators as well as the P-card coordinators. We'll be inviting them to the training. This year, we'll have a stronger message along with that in terms of mandatory attendance to it, and then we'll be able to follow up with anyone who's not able to attend those Zoom meetings to be able to participate and watch it. We're going to record the Zoom trainings, make them available on our intranet, and those new members can, and anyone who wasn't able to attend can complete the training there.
So I have a little tip for you. So IT has implemented a way in which they will continue to email you if you haven't done your mandatory IT training, and it works very well. So, and they will continue until you get it done. So I think that that might be something worth looking into. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else with a question. The only question I had is related to the amount of travel by the police department. I know they've been actively doing a lot of recruiting, and that requires a lot of travel to universities and other parts of the country and such. Was that part of the numbers that we see, Joe?
I'm assuming, I don't have the details,
All right.
but I'm assuming there's some
Yeah,
element
because I
of
know
that,
they do.
you know?
They've
Yeah.
been going out for a little while already,
Yeah.
and so I think it's we're going to consistently see them at the top. I get the sense. So we have a motion and a second on the floor, and we'll take a vote.
Did you want to take the items electronically to vote? Yep, okay.
All right, that passes unanimously. We're gonna move on to item D2, which is the recruitment, hiring, retention strategy status report. Certainly a very timely topic. So welcome, Jennifer.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Shembry. I'm the Director of Human Resources and Employer Relations. With me here, I have Kelly Parmley, who's the Assistant Director of Human Resources, and Demetria Machado, who is a Deputy Public Information Officer with the City Manager's Office. And I'm actually going to turn it over to them to do the presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair, Council members, Assistant Director for Human Resources, Kelly Parmley. Well, I would go back, but I won't. I'll just, thank you. I'll use this just to say, to frame our presentation and our report today a little more succinctly, to be aligned with two really important objectives for us under the Powered by People strategic initiative in the city. One is to recruit and retain a high-performing workforce. The second part, I'll speak to near the end of the presentation, around nurturing employee growth, safety, and wellness as it's connected to our retention conversations. We'll try to keep this succinct. There's a lot of information in the memo, but we'll highlight some important things in 3 different areas. I just want to remind us here at the beginning about the general context out there in terms of public sector hiring in our local area and how that translates into our vacancy rate, and then talk about a series of things that have been really big progress for us despite all of the challenges that many of you are well aware of and we are continuing to face and work on over time. And then just by way of more mention than anything else, talk about how we're going to create a focus on retention. In the last presentation, I showed you some recent numbers from the year before from NeoGov, who is the entity and organization by which we're going to do a major modernization of our hiring process through new system application software. What they say here is reminding us that in the broader national perspective around public sector hiring and from the data and research that they do, that this gap between the jobs that are available, the jobs that are getting posted, and the applicants for those positions, the gap is widening. So there's more proportionally in terms of postings out there with fewer applicants per posting, and it's gone down again from about 28% down to almost 20%. So another percentage point drop, but about, I think, 30% or so jump in terms of postings out there. So we've got a challenge in terms of getting folks to apply for public sector jobs. The second thing, some good news for us first, I think I will put here. We've got some preliminary data. We don't publish the formal and official data from an integrity perspective until next week. We show here 14%, but we're about 13.6%. So we're down under 14% through a lot of work and effort and concerted partnership with many folks around the city. But you can see here that we're, again, not the only ones. Sometimes it feels like we're an island unto ourselves, and yet we are out there in the market with lots of other folks who are having some more challenge than we are. And some of them are local agency contenders. This is a lot of data. I'll just say a couple of things about this to remind you, because the vacancy rate can be a complicated concept. Lots of folks feel like it measures and helps us assess just our progress in hiring. But our vacancy rate is impacted by a few things. Number one, as we add budgeted full-time FTE positions, that denominator changes, and so our vacancy rate goes up, right? So we've had probably some conversations this budget cycle about how we keep those to the absolute most prioritized and minimum so that we don't add more vacancies to our budget. The second thing that I would offer in here is that the proportion of external hires to internal hires affects those numbers down there, that 14% for us in March. But you can see the trend over time. It sort of fluctuates, right? If we hire folks, which we want to make sure we're providing all the opportunity that we can for our internal folks, right? And at the same time, holding this, we need to attract folks from the outside. So that proportion also impacts this. The other thing is are we retaining our folks? And so in the end, you'll see some thoughts about how we're going to pivot the conversation and strategies around retention so that we keep folks, right? And then I would say the other thing is this is impacted by our capacity, of which you're going to ask for some investment in the budget cycle for that, for sure. But what I want to say about it is that we have lots of positions not in our full-time budgeted positions that we measure the vacancy rate by that we're doing our hiring for. So for example, all the hiring in PRNS, right, for our seasonal hires takes capacity of our staff to do it. It's really important, doesn't affect us. So I just want to remind us all, it's a complicated thing. Lots of things affect the vacancy rate. But we have some progress despite the challenges. We got to celebrate some of that. This was a phenomenal effort. Started, we've been at this over a year now, which is to work with our departments to set quarterly goals for hiring, priorities within those goals, and then every single week, the employment team with all of our partners get together and talk about our progress, which is why Jennifer's able to answer many of your questions about where we stand with really critical hires in the process. But what I want to share here is just we've been meeting those targets, and we means us and the employment team plus our partners in the departments who are really focused on making sure that we're hiring. So that first quarter that we had, if you remember, it's that little salmon color means that was our first attempt at setting it. We didn't quite make it, but the other quarters we have done a great job of really pressing the departments to be aggressive in how they're approaching hiring, but also then meet them. This last quarter, when we make that minimum goal of 200, will put us back at a level from 2017, which was our most recent year within the last 5 years. That was our highest hiring volume, right? So we're doing a really great job in working partnership strategically with these quarterly goals. The challenge is we've got more vacancies to fill, more of those budgeted positions than we had 5 years ago. This is really important, near and dear to my heart, because I'm working with the team that's implementing this with the support of a lot of other folks. But I do want to say we kicked off this project back in February. Part of our modernization effort means we need to have some process improvement and a system that's going to support it, right? So this may not seem like a lot, but we got 700 plus job classifications. All of them are going to be digitized in the next couple of weeks. That is a huge thing, a big success for us as a team to be able to have that data live in a modernized environment. And it uses as that the basis to do our launching of new postings as we implement the system on August 1. So we're doing lots of process improvements around there. I just met with the departments this week, about 40 plus folks, to talk about and involve them in some process changes. I don't know if you've looked at our postings recently, but there's some really complex postings. Some of those flexibly staffed positions where you got if this, then that, and if this, then that, right? And in order to assess whether you're qualified, we're gonna streamline those and we're gonna work with them to do that. That's just one example of about 5 big projects to process improve and have a system that's gonna help us do it better and be more attractive to the folks who wanna come here. We also have done some things Jennifer mentioned last time, that we were starting a centralization pilot. We're going to try just about everything we can to figure out how to help some of the most challenged departments, Parks and Rec, Housing, Code Enforcement team, and Planning, Building, Code Enforcement. Jennifer kicked that off with the employment team and the new centralization team in mid-April, and that was because we had hired a program manager. So we're excited to have him join us, bring folks from each of those departments into the process, and augment that with some additional hiring. We got all but one analyst hired in a very short period of time to get that team staffed up to focus on those 3 departments and make some progress. So we're really excited about that. We also have, for your attention during the budget process, a request for some staffing. We are the only strategic support department in the city. I don't know if I was supposed to say that out loud, Jennifer, but I'm going to say it anyways. That doesn't have a deputy. So Jennifer and I, and then division managers manage the human resource department. We believe that adding a deputy that will combine our workforce learning and development team with the employment team to connect the pipeline work to the hiring work will actually be a strategic effort on our part. So we are asking for a deputy position for the first time in the HR department. And then you will see some other really important opportunities for us during the budget process to make some positions permanent, to make sure we sustain and maintain some positions going forward. And then I'll just mention the class and comp unit. It's not really sexy work, but it's really important work to make those classifications up to date, right? To make sure that they're relevant, make sure that they're contemporary, and also reflect the needs that we have in terms of staffing the work for the community. So about 30 additional changes went to the Civil Service Commission. Some really important new ones in there. I think there's a construction inspector, something along those lines, that was really important for us to get through. So they're doing really important work as well, and there's part of that budget request as well. So this is where I get to bring in my good friend and colleague. Would you like to go over this part, which is the part about the gap between applications and postings out there and people applying has to do with awareness. Some of that happens with the pipeline work, but really important work with the city manager's communications shop is really helping us on this front. So I'll give it to you.
Good afternoon, Chairperson, committee members, and members of the public. My name is Demetria Machado, and I'm the Deputy Public Information Officer in the City Manager's Office, Office of Communications. I've had the pleasure of working on the citywide priority hiring campaign over the past several months, since about February. We curated and implemented a robust communications plan for a general hiring campaign and identified specific positions that have been hard to fill. First, we started with designing a bright and beautiful banner, if you see it outside, displayed on City Hall, which is our neighbors walking by, San Jose State students can see, drivers, the community walking in the downtown area, and those taking public transportation can see it as they pass by. We promoted the general hiring campaign through organic and paid social media posts, placed advertisements on tailgates of 20 VTA buses that run throughout San Jose. And if you're driving down Highway 101 near Lafayette Street, please look up, because on that digital billboard, you'll see the We Are Hiring ad for the month of May. This billboard alone is forecasted to receive 500,000 impressions or views. Additionally, we created a template that provides consistent branding for the hiring campaign that our HR recruiters can utilize and have utilized for social media posts, flyers, and other collateral material to promote job openings. My team and I worked with HR to identify hard-to-fill positions, as I mentioned, and we promoted those specific positions through organic or non-paid social media posts, stories and reels on Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And this is on the city's social media platforms. And then also the departments shared on their social media platforms as well. In addition, we developed social media posts for paid advertising on LinkedIn and also advertising on Google Ads. We researched job boards and posted on paid and non-paid job boards to target the specific industry of the position. And these are the hard to fill positions. We received impressive analytics, which includes impressions or views, shares, and click-through rates. So for the organic, as you can see, or non-paid media posts, we received more than 150,000 impressions or views, 425 shares, and almost 4,000 click-through to either the HR hiring page, or it could have been a specific position. And then for the paid social media, thank you, posts, we received almost 500,000 impressions or views and more than 2,000 click-throughs. Along with HR recruiters, we are continuing to post on social media, organic and paid, regularly for specific positions and the overall general hiring campaign. In the very near future, we will implement radio advertising to promote our general hiring campaign that will reach the residents of San Jose and the greater Bay Area. In addition, we will be utilizing our amazing employees as ambassadors to talk about why they love to work for the city of San Jose. Thank you.
Thank you, Demetria. It's been a pleasure to work with the city manager's office on particularly the targeted, really hard to fill positions. It's been really important work. A couple things very quickly to bring this presentation to closure. In the memo and in the prior memo, we named a lot of activities in this, what we're calling the pipeline space that the Workforce Learning and Development team is doing. We, since the last time we were in front of you, produced the first annual Explore Careers with the City afternoon in the Rotunda. It was hugely successful. I don't know if you have that anxiety when you invited people to a party and you wonder if they're going to show up. These were students that we invited, and so it took quite a bit of effort for us to work with our great partners over at San Jose State, including the president's office, who helped to put out the word to literally walk students over, and more than 160 of city staff took more than half a day to, and all the time before, to prepare really important tabling that was more about educating about the airport to a zoo and everything in between, and why a college student might be interested in committing their lives and their careers to public service. So it was really awesome to have so many people show up for us here and there. And so we hope to continue this as an annual thing. There are lots of other activities that we're doing that fit in this that require a fair amount of effort and energy, which is why as we move into next year, and because, in part because I come from higher education and the education space, I think there's an opportunity for us to get pretty strategic about how these partnerships work. But we're going to strengthen the partnership with SJSU. We started some work with City College and some other community colleges. We started those conversations, Santa Clara and others. Those relationships take a little bit of time to build. We've revised our intern policy and are working on developing programs, not just the hiring of interns, but how do you create a program for them. We've got a 4-credit academic agreement that we're working on with San Jose State, where students could get credit if they come here as an intern. And then also working in the high school space, lots of opportunities there. So we've had, as part of our budget request, some opportunities here to invest in the pipeline work, and then also continue supporting our burgeoning learning and development space. So you see that there. And so I just want to highlight that creating a focus on retention really requires everyone. HR can spend some time bringing data to folks' attention, can spearhead some efforts by bringing best practices and all of that, but it requires every single one of us to understand how we retain our folks, our talent that we spent so much time and effort and energy to bring here for good reasons, right? So this is just to remind us that Deloitte put out a report that this next generation, of which I think we have, I think over half of our full-time population is now Gen Y or Gen Z, and so these folks are wanting some different things, from wanting to commit their time here in public service, and so just remembering flexibility, understanding their purpose and why they came here, and can we make sure we onboard them in a way that taps into that purpose and that effort and that energy. Well-being is really important to this next generation. So we have a lot of things that are in flight. Departments are doing amazing things out there as well as we are, but we're going to get together in June with our senior and executive staff and look at some of the things we're already doing out of the learning and development team. New employees want growth opportunities. We've only brought the learning and development team into existence within the last 6 years, and we have remade that twice, one pre-COVID and one post-COVID. So focusing on how we bring growth opportunities to our employees is going to be really important, along with the pipeline work that creates that awareness, because the hiring and the retention go hand in hand. We can hire folks, and then we also need to understand their onboarding experience, as well as how we give them those opportunities to grow individually and across the city. These are some of the folks that we're working with. I just spent some time with the Billions Institute today, and we've got some really great opportunities for folks in that growth space. So we'll come back to you next time with some progress on the centralization pilot. How is that going? How is that helping us learn and understand how to support 3 really critical departments who need some additional assistance? What can we learn from that? By the time we come back to you, we will have had a budget passage, and we will potentially hire some key staff. This implementation of the software system and the process improvement will launch by August, when we'll want to come back and let you know how some of the process improvements and another 6 months or so of work to really make that hum is going to take place. And then come back with what we learned from talking with our senior leaders about what are some retention strategies that we can commit to supporting one another on in terms of retention in the future. And I think that's probably more than enough. Thank you for your time.
A lot of information. Thank you so much for the information. We're going to go to public comment, and we do have questions, but we'll go to public comment first.
Paul?
Thank you. What I found, also from the Horseshoe, what I found very encouraging is the Georgetown report. That, and I'm quoting, publication from the Georgetown University Center for Education in the Workforce affirms the positive long-term economic value of a 4-year degree, and that some pathways to long-term 4-year degree attainment start with stable employment, career, and the opportunity to work while getting a degree. I love that. That is excellent. So my challenge to the city is, where is this recruitment being done at the high school level? Because now at this age, okay, you got a 16-year-old and a 22-year-old. Okay, that's a pretty big difference. But 10 years from that point, it's not too much. And so you want to get into the high schools that already had deficiencies in investment. Now, creating that pipeline between the high schools and the zip codes on the east side, and creating that system to where they're incentivized to work and get a degree at the same time, would make the working with the city and for the city far more attractive. Then, okay, well, go ahead, go to college, get your degree, and get your degree, and then come back. But if you have that collaboration, and I think this is important because one of the main issues of the Chicano movement from the 1960s, we're not going to move away from that, was employment in the city and county. And it was Victor Garza that had pushed, Victor Garza and Rosa Amador, and a lot of people that were connected to Confederación de la Raza Unida that pushed for that, to make certain that equity was installed back then in the 70s, because you had no Chicanos in civil service. So my question is, well, not really a question, but how are we going to really institutionalize that pipeline rather than just talk about it rhetorically? Thank you.
Catherine?
Hi, my name is Catherine Hedges. I'm with Surge, not necessarily speaking for them on this item. Paula had some really good comments about hiring people straight out of high school. That's a good idea. I also support the unions and their Staff Up campaign. I'm glad the city is making an effort to hire people. I'm really disappointed that housing is being delayed because we have a shortage of code inspectors. So projects are getting stuck at the various permitting points along the way, and the inspection points where construction can't proceed, and the final certificate of inspection for the Virginia Street Senior Studios, whatever it's called, that has been delayed for about 6 months by a lack of inspectors to perform the final certificate of occupancy. Thanks very much.
Blair?
Hi, really nice words from public comment today to add to Catherine Hedges' words. In recruitment ideas, we're also with housing issues trying to consider city housing staff that can better follow our unhoused situations from beginning to end. You need a more full staff in that area as well, which budgetary dollars can be really helpful for to address that. We have the dollars to better address those things now. I hope those are the sort of things we've been questioning for years now that I hope we want to work on and really finalize for ourselves and grow and mature as a community process. With my remaining time, it's been a really interesting item. Thank you. I think in the past 6 months, or in the past 18 months, there's been a real push to bring back the concepts of hiring for policing and what can be recruitment for policing. And I've been really worried about it. I've really questioned it because I can understand its purpose and need as a community wholeness process, but you're doing it at the same way of also discounting and not crediting the concepts of reimagine enough. You're not learning how to merge those two concepts together in the future of community. What is the future of police hiring practices and creating an overall feeling of better, of policing for our future. This item really speaks to that, to involve the future of police recruiting within government services as part of government services. That's an important concept. And to be clear, with the fentanyl issues that happen, we really have to reestablish, the concepts of reimagine and a balance in how to talk about the future of recruitment of policing as the concepts of neighborhood development.
Back to the committee.
Thank you. We have a few questions. We're going to go to Councilmember Batra first.
Thank you for that excellent report. The impressive part of this thing is we talked about vacancies in council meetings, in closed door meetings, but we really took the proper meaning of the vacancy. Vacancy is not because we haven't hired people. It's not because they are not being retained. So looking at the whole thing end to end, from the time that we have realized that we need a person, to the time how we hire them, how we retain them, how we reward them, how we encourage them to bring their colleagues and friends into the city. So I think this is our opportunity of having gotten to the 14% vacancy rate has given us a motivation to really investigate our complete end-to-end process. And what you have done in the modernization is certainly going to yield results in terms of being able to hire more people by going to the schools and all. But it improves the image of the city, that we are a modern city to work for. We are not a 150-year-old city which is still using the typewriter. We are working with the latest technologies which people really want to work with. They like social media. Is there part of their life? We're using social media to recruit them, so they feel comfortable about it. So I think those things which you have done, they didn't have to be done, but they were necessary for us to get where we need to go, and we'll be able to retain. The addition jobs which we do, and we have a vacancies because of that, because of the FTEs numbers increase. I think that's a very good story because it says we are a growing city, and hence there are opportunities which we can provide. Even the unfilled one, send a good message out there. So I think all in all, this thing, having a large vacancy rate has given the city to improve us in many, many different ways. And you have certainly cashed in on that opportunity. So I congratulate you on that you've done a great job on that. I do have a couple of questions. You provided a lot of data about monthly, how many hires you have done, how many vacancies they were there. and how many internal, how many external. One area which I would like to see added in there is how many retirements did you have that month, okay? And how many people left not retiring? Because during the COVID and post-COVID, it has become pretty common for people to, if they are eligible for retirement, they've cashed in on their retirement. So we'll want to see some of our impact is because of that national trend. So it would be helpful to have that numbers in columns showing the number of retirements taken and number of other people leaving. And that will actually show us that, hey, we have done even a better job than what the numbers are currently saying in terms of bringing in new people or vacancy rate. Because if somebody is retired, they didn't find our job to be not interesting. We are concerned about the ones who leave for the other reasons. Retirement is not a negative against us. So I would like to see that added into this thing. And otherwise, I find that all the work you've done has got us on the right path. And I'm sure we're going to be celebrating a lot of these new hires for the company. Okay?
Thank you, Councilmember Bottcher. We appreciate your comments, and the credit goes to the team, some of which are here. So I appreciate all the employment team, both within HR and the departments, in partnering with us to solve this issue, and we will definitely incorporate that into the next presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to go to Vice Mayor Kamei.
Thank you. A lot has been done, and I want to thank you so much. I really, really like your Explore Careers. I thought that was absolutely fabulous. And I know that it took a lot of work, a lot of people spending half days or even more, but it was just wonderful. And I know you're trying to think about whether or not it would be once a year. I would consider it twice a year, one in spring, one in the fall, because I think that you can really build momentum on that, especially if you're able to bring in, young people who are, who haven't really set on a career or what they could possibly do, or they're exploring. And I just think that's a wonderful thing. I'm really delighted, and I look forward to the internships and what you're doing there. And I have in my past have had interns, and it's just great. It's really wonderful to give them exposure, and they don't know what they don't know. So I think that I love that, and I think that doing the outreach, thank you so much. There are a lot of people who are just not aware of what are the possibilities. So I think that that's very, very effective. I was really astonished, the one slide that you had about the widening gap, the national trend. And I know that years and years ago, because we understood that the baby boomer generation was going to have a tremendous effect, because they're the largest of the population, right? I'm just wondering, as we're moving forward, we ended up with the other generations, which were much smaller than the baby boomers. And we knew that people were going to retire, or they're going to do other things. And so, I know that that has had an impact when you're looking at some of these positions. And I'm just wondering, and I don't know if you have this for San Jose, is the gap as big as the national trend? I mean, how are we in comparison? Because I know there's a gap, but, I think that it's important for us to look at, the different generations and those who are eligible to be employed, because if it continues to be skinny, then there are more people who are being sought after anyway. So this just exacerbates the whole issue.
Yeah, thank you, Council Member, for your comments. I think it's really important for us to remember there's a national trend and then what's happening here in the city. With about 52% of our current full-time population of employees being Gen Y and Gen Z, it tells me that we're doing a reasonably good job of attracting the next generation to the city, right? So we don't have application data that would parallel what the national trend is, because they were looking at applications and then people who've applied per
Yeah.
application, right? Because our current system doesn't allow us to do that, but because we're implementing NeoGov, we hope to be able to
Yeah.
have a full, what I would call funnel perspective on this, so you can look at applications and then keep narrowing it down. So I can't answer it from that perspective. I do, though, find it incredibly hopeful and optimistic that we've attracted and have that proportion of our population, young folks who are here at the city, which means we really need to take a lot of time and attention to keeping them, right? Because they're asking different things of us in our workplace and how we do the work and all that kind of stuff. So I think, I don't know, I can't answer it specifically to that data, but my sense is we're doing a pretty good job of attracting folks from the next generation to us and getting their interest through things that we're doing. I think our thing is to keep them.
That's good to know, because I saw that graph and I thought, oh my goodness.
It just reminds us in HR,
Yeah.
who are responsible for the recruiting, it's a tough market out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I really think that you're doing a great job. I know it's not easy. I like the fact that you iterate and that you try things, and this is working well, or well, that didn't work. So I just appreciate that so much, because I did a little stint in HR and I know how hard it is. So thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to Councilmember Torres.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you so much for that presentation, and thank you so much for making sure that we are eradicating our vacancy rate. So just a couple of questions. One of them is, can you just explain to me the 598 additional employees? What positions are those? What?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I give you broadly scoped.
Yeah.
Those are positions that aren't budgeted. So those are overstrength positions, temporary positions, part-time positions,
Okay.
that have some, so it's just everything that's not budgeted, which is a lot.
Okay. Crossing guards, library pages, rec leaders.
Yep.
Yeah. Things like that. All right. Great. And then I'm wondering if I can get my hands on stay interview data, because I know that we keep mentioning Gen Y and Gen Z, and retention is super important for our city, and so I want to know why our city employees want to stay with us, right? And so I think that's very, very, very important to know, because I know at our last hearings or last committees, and I'm not sure, I think it was either this one or on city council, where they say that where you all told us that Gen Y and Z only their life, like their life, I shouldn't say life expectancy. I know, sorry Gen Y and Z, that they only stay 4 or 5 years and then move on somewhere else, right? When we want them to stay with our city. So it would be important for my office to get stay interview data, because we do that, right?
Thank you for the question. We have a program that we started last year called Employee Experience Conversations. It was our specific, what I would call twist on what I would not recommend we do, which are exit interviews, right? So there's this whole thing out there about exit interviews. They're just highly unreliable. So we worked with a really awesome consultant who's doing some training with us on Employee Experience Conversations, which is the preemptive, why do you stay? Why'd you come here? What gets you up every day? What's challenging you to be successful in your job? Those kinds of things. That's a very private conversation between a supervisor and an employee, and a non-performance one. So the best we could do is ask for themes from departments who are doing those, right? Because those are what we would call confidential conversations to protect individuals, to have those. But we get themes, and it really lives with the departments. So it take us a bit to figure out what the themes are from folks that are having those conversations. We certainly, as I'm looking at Assistant City Manager Wilcox, going to have a conversation with senior and exec staff. That would be one ask that we probably could make of folks, is help us understand what you're learning from those conversations. Does that make sense?
We should do that at our training that we have on the 21st, actually, in June.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. We've had a round that we just did with mid-level supervisors. So we did employee experience conversations training and support for senior and executive staff, and then we did over 200 mid-level managers here at the city in this last year. And we're learning from the consultant that our people are wildly enthusiastic about the work of the city. That's what we have going for us. Folks really care about coming to the city and working for our community. And then I don't know what the rest of the stuff is in terms of their challenges, right?
Great. Yeah, no. And I definitely want to know the themes because I know possibly wages or pensions might be one of them. I know the other one that we might know is housing, right? We are in Silicon Valley, and I can assure you that when I was knocking on doors running for this position, I knocked on plenty of apartments and houses and duplexes with Gen Y, Z city employees living 4, 5, sometimes even 10 for the big houses in Nagley Park, even 10 city employees living in a house. So definitely would love to get some of that, the theme or data, whichever we want to call it. So.
And I'll just offer that a lot of those conversations are about what can we at the city do to support you to be successful. So it may be, I'm looking for mentorship, I'm looking for growth opportunities. I'm wondering what is that pension thing that I don't quite understand, and how do I get additional financial resources, right? So it may yield some of the themes that you are talking about.
Right.
It may well be things that are more in our control as an administration to support employees. If that makes sense.
Yep, great. Thank you. And then with that, I motion to accept D2.
Second.
Item D2.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. We have one more speaker, Councilmember Duan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, staff, for the wonderful report. As an employee here with the city of San Jose, I do understand it's extremely difficult to qualify or purchase a home, and rents are extremely high. I wonder have you worked on or look into possibly an employee assistant and financial resource toward home ownership? Like perhaps, lower the amount of finance they have to put down on a house, or some type of rent assistant or homeowner assistant?
Thank you for the question. We are in negotiations with our unions right now, and that is, a topic that's being discussed, and we could bring, specifics back to you in closed session as part of that process. I can say, and you may have seen this, we've been sending out citywide emails from the Human Resources Department and the Housing Department. There's a county program that our city employees would qualify for, that we've encouraged our employees to sign up to get more information on, and I believe we have about 250 or 300 employees that have signed up to participate in that, at least the information session. So we're pushing out as much resources as we can, even if it's not necessarily a city resource, but it may be a resource elsewhere that our city employees can participate in.
Well, thank you for that. And I know that I spoke to a lot of our public servants and our school teachers and so on. I think part of the recruitment and retention, if you have some type of program, that would help tremendously for the retention and the recruitment as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Batra had, I think, a friendly amendment.
Yeah, could you take the friendly amendment to the motion, accept the report, and in future reports, update table on page 3 to show number of retirees and number of people who retired in that month, and the number of people who left for other reasons.
Yes, I looked over at Lee. He said yes, so I do. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, thank
All
you. No? Okay. Okay, I just had a few questions. I think that's it, right? Okay. Just a few questions I had, just very briefly. I know that, for example, at the airport, we get some screen time on some of the agreements that we have there. Do we actually advertise there as well for folks that are coming in and out of the airport?
No, we haven't. But that's something to consider. I know they have an agreement with Clear Channel. I used to work at the airport.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, correct.
I have
And
connections there.
And I think a percentage of the time, they're supposed to circulate something related to the city or something like that.
That's
So-
correct. Airport has a certain percentage, like you said. I'm not sure what that is.
But I think it'd be interesting to see if that would take with some of the folks that are coming in and out of the airport, especially the amount of travelers that pass.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great idea, and I'll research it.
Okay, thank you. And the other question, Jennifer, can you remind me, do we, or even you, Kelly, any referral fees for, say, I'm an employee and I bring in, my cousin, Councilmember Duan, into, the city, and I get like $1,000 bonus or a free dinner card or something like that? Is there anything? What do we do?
Yes, we do. We've had one historically, and it was $500, I believe, and we, in the last couple of years, have increased it to $1,500. So we do have a hiring referral incentive. And then there are specific classifications that have a lot higher. Park
Okay.
rangers. I'm not sure the police officer one is still in place, but we have done it on a case-by-case basis with certain classifications.
So this isn't a sign-on bonus. This is a referral.
This is a referral
Okay,
for
okay.
our current city employee to
Okay.
refer another.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And do they need and I was trying to remember, now it's all coming back to me, but do they have to stay a certain amount of time with the city before it kicks in?
They have, the employee themselves has to pass probation. There also is referral bonuses that we have for the person coming in, and there's also certain requirements for them to be able to get that as well. But in order for our city employee to get a referral bonus because they referred someone who was hired, that person has to pass probation.
Okay, all right, okay. The other question I had is, I'm trying to, I've been here about 6.5 years, it seems like forever, but you've been here a little longer. And so what I'm curious about, do you have in your mind as to when hiring and filling vacancies sort of became an issue, if you will, with the city? Like, when is it that became sort of a prime concern with the city? Do you recall? Do you have a sense as to? Or Lee? Lee's been here forever too, so maybe you want to.
I'm going to jump in after Jennifer gives an answer, because I think I would maybe answer it slightly different than Jennifer.
Well,
Why don't you go ahead? Because I'm actually, because we've gone through different budget situations. So we've had times where we're not hiring. We've had hiring freezes. We've cut positions. We've laid off employees. So it's hard to say specifically. I don't know, Lee, if you haven't.
What's your recollection, Lee?
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I mean, we've gone through different periods where there's been hiring freezes. We've not had a hiring freeze in some time. I also think, it's become a bit of a narrative right now. Like, we've never been an organization that's had a vacancy rate around 2 or 4% since I've been here that I can ever remember. I do think the community and the council asked the organization to do an awful lot during COVID. So in addition to the 264 programs that we continue to run, we did do a lot of extra things that were needed for our community. And so I do think from an organizational standpoint, and rightfully so, we've always been very lean organization. And so now we're turning attention to get, additional folks on board to help with those expanded scopes. So, I think Jennifer and Kelly and team are doing a tremendous job, and I'm glad with this year's budget and the council's wanting for us to focus on it is really important, because it is the strategic support groups, especially HR, where they usually don't get that time and attention. They're usually doing a variety of other things. So the space and the creativity that you're giving them to focus on this issue is really important for us, just from an organizational health perspective.
Okay. Yeah, because I think we could all agree is we don't want the city to be in the future, right, to the extent we have control over it, to be in the same predicament we're in now, trying to fill all these positions. And so, Jennifer, would you characterize what we're currently doing essentially like having our foot on the gas pedal? We're stepping on it. We're speeding up, or is that?
Yes, I would say so.
Okay.
The changes that we have made in the last, I would say, 2 years is beyond, I think, what we've done in my 18 years here. And we're modernizing a lot of different things, trying anything we can to see if it works, and iterating, as the vice mayor said, on those processes. I think a lot of credit goes to Kelly for all that creativity and her bringing in kind of a new, different perspective on those sorts of things. So I think we're doing a lot of good work, but we're not in this alone, I think, is the important thing. This is something that all other agencies in the area are experiencing.
Right, okay. And then just to my final question, just to wrap up everything I asked, what I'm curious about is we have our foot on the gas pedal, right? I think we would all agree we don't want to be in this predicament again, but what is the, how long do we keep it on the gas pedal in your mind? When do we know that we can sort of ease off a little bit? Is it a, bringing the vacancy rate below 10, or, what is that in your mind?
So I'm not sure I would say we ever should ease off on it. We're always going to have to be filling positions. There's always going to be positions added or people leaving or that sort of thing. I would never characterize us, wanting to ease off. I think our goal is to get our vacancy rate below 10%. I think that's kind of a standard, if you're below 10%. And I do want to mention we were right before COVID, we were actually very close to that. So we were like in the 10.3% range, and then COVID happened, and everything that Lee mentioned did definitely bring us up, plus the addition of positions.
And do you think everything the city's doing is sustainable as far as the speed and the speed and the effort and what we're doing? This current rate right now, today, all the efforts you cited, is it sustainable for the next 4 years?
I'm not sure I
3
could
years?
answer that in a general term. I think everything, we just need to keep looking at everything and iterating on it. And if something's not working, maybe we don't do it. But I think being kind of intentional and creative as we're doing, I think that is important, and we should continue doing that regardless of what our vacancy rate is.
Okay, all right, thank you, appreciate it. And I think there's a motion and a second on the floor. Passes unanimously. We're going to move on to D3. Thank you very much for the presentation of the information. City Initiatives Roadmap, Police Department Reform or Operational Improvement Recommendation Status Report. I know we have Lieutenant Hamlin and we have Peter Hamilton that's share with us.
Thank you and good afternoon. I am Lieutenant Paul Hamblin of the Research and Development Unit of the Police Department. With me is Peter Hamilton of the City Manager's Office. And we will be presenting the Police Department's Reform and Operational Improvement Recommendations Report. Today, I'll start by providing a brief history of the recommendations, and then we'll talk about the status of the recommendations and see how much progress we made. And finally, we'll look at where we're going from here and then answer any questions. This list of recommendations is the result of a great deal of work and collaboration between the department and numerous stakeholders from the community and other city departments. On March 1st of 2022, the City Council approved the department's response to the reports by the CNA Corporation, an independent auditor sanctioned by the department. And the reports were titled Use of Force Assessment of the San Jose Police Department and 21st Century Policing Assessment of the San Jose Police Department. 2 months later, the City Manager's Office presented reports from the Reimagining Public Safety Community Advisory Committee and the Charter Review Commission Public Safety recommendations to City Council. On November 17th, 2022, the department provided its first report to the PISFIS Committee on these recommendations for police reform and operational improvement. The report included analysis of implementation to date and a review of outstanding recommendations. After the report, the department was directed to return and provide a status update in 6 months. And what follows is that update. There are currently 536 recommendations from 11 sources tracked by the department, 499 of which are managed by the department and 37 of which are managed by the City Manager's Office. The largest contributor is the CNA 21st Century Policing Audit with 124 recommendations, followed by recommendations by the San Jose Independent Police Auditor with 106, and the Reimagining Public Safety Advisory Committee with 71. 254 of the 536 recommendations, or 47%, are completed. There are 199 recommendations remaining to be completed. There are 57 recommendations amounting to 11% that were deemed impractical and will not be implemented. The recommendations address a wide variety and range of priorities and issues, from recruiting and staffing to community engagement to department member wellness. Most recommendations involve changing policy, 286, followed by training and community engagement, both 50, and transparency with 36. Now let's take a look at the progress we've made in the past 6 months. This graph shows where we are today compared to where we were in November of 2022. There are 2 markers in particular we want to look at. The first is completed items, which ideally would have gone up over the past 6 months. And the second is agreed but not started, which ideally would have gone down during that time. As you can see, the number of items completed, shown in yellow, has gone up from 226 to 254. And the number of items that we agreed but had not started, which is red, actually looks orange there, has gone down from 120 to 95. Both of these markers show solid progress, and I'm extremely optimistic that these numbers will continue to go up. As my staff was gathering data for this report, it was noticeable how many items were on the brink of being completed. So I have no doubt that the number of completed items will make an even greater leap by our next report. Now let's look at some of our accomplishments over the past 6 months. These are all items that address specific recommendations. First is the Executive Force Review Committee. The EFRC convenes regularly to review use of force incidents. The committee is comprised of department command officers identified by the Office of the Chief and specially trained in force analysis and decision-making under stress. The committee analyzes force applied during an event, identifying any observed misconduct, identifying training opportunities, and documenting their analyses for review by the chain of command. Implementation of department-wide training. Since our last report, the department has completed the LGBTQ+ awareness training, which was attended by every sworn and non-sworn member of the department. The department is currently providing officers with a training called Why'd You Stop Me? This 9-hour course teaches officers communications techniques to improve interactions between the police and the public. We are continuing to teach procedural justice, which stresses a customer service model of policing by instilling the principles of teaching people or treating people with respect and dignity and giving them a voice. The entire department has received this training, and we are continuing to provide it to our academy classes and new lateral hires. The department's next major undertaking is a multi-layered racial equity training, which will include both online courses and multiple in-person classes. Mobile Crisis Assessment Team. MCAT is fully functional, deploying a team consisting of 1 sergeant and 3 officers every day of the week. MCAT operates on a co-response model of deployment, which pairs specially trained officers and licensed mental health clinicians. The team responds to non-urgent follow-up requests and, when appropriate and safe, to in-progress calls for community members experiencing mental health crises. Language Action Plan. The department updated its Language Action Plan to provide limited English proficient, LEP individuals with timely and meaningful access to available programs, services, and benefits. And we offer a conversational Spanish class to our academies and our veteran officers. Now, where do we go from here? Moving forward, we will continue to work toward implementing the agreed but not started and currently in progress items. And one such item is the community engagement consultant. The department is in the process of hiring a community engagement consultant who is a non-sworn full-time employee and who will provide evaluation and recommendations on community engagement, relationship building, participation in department activities, training, and policy direction. Now, Peter Hamilton, Assistant to the City Manager, will discuss some of the items the City Manager's office is working on.
Thank you, Lieutenant Hamblin. So we wanted to, as part of the report, we wanted to provide you with a kind of a focused update on our work plan for the next fiscal year, on priority items from priority recommendations from the Reimagining Public Safety Community Advisory Committee. And as you may know, that this committee was a community-led task force that completed its work and transmitted a report to the City Council last year with a number of recommendations, both around police reform and alternative approaches to public safety. And when we came before you, when we came before this committee in November, one of our action items was leading up to the 23-24 budget process to engage with leaders of that committee and develop a set of priority items that we would pursue in the next fiscal year. And I will advance the slide. So as outlined in the staff report, these are our three focuses, or three main focuses. And we developed these really in two ways. One, staff from the City Manager's office had a series of meetings with the Real Coalition, which is a group of community leaders who are focused on issues of racial equity. And many of them were instrumental leaders also in the reimagining process. So they've taken the lead in advocating for the city's continued work on these topics. So City Manager's office held a series of meetings with the Real Coalition, and also the March budget message and council direction through the March message provided us with resources and direction on a couple of projects that directly align with the Reimagining Committee's work recommendations. And so from both of those, from our outreach and from the council direction, we've developed these three priorities, which I'll just review for you briefly. The first one, in the March budget message, we received direction to allocate resources in the proposed budget to develop a community-based program that would advance community-based solutions to domestic violence. And this is the idea would be that we would work with community partners to find approaches to domestic violence that might include providing community-based resources, providing training, other types of interventions that would both help to prevent domestic violence and create capacity in the community to address and resolve it. And pursuant to the direction in the March message, the 23-24 proposed operating budget proposes $400,000 to advance this project in the next year. And so pending council approval of the proposed budget, we would pursue that in the next fiscal year. The March message also directed staff to conduct an analysis of police department 911 calls and develop and identify categories of calls that might be appropriate for some kind of alternative response. So we'll also pursue this in the next fiscal year. There's direction included direction to evaluate staffing and resource needs that may be required to implement alternative approaches. So we would do that work as well. And the final one, we heard from the Real Coalition a great interest in the city really increasing its focus on violence prevention efforts. And this is many cities, many local governments across the country over the last few years have really increase their efforts in this area. I think it's important to note the city has long-standing efforts related to violence prevention. Our Youth Empowerment Alliance for many decades has been focused on youth violence prevention. But with the increased focus on this across the country, there are increasingly many models and best practices that are available to us. And in fact, the first bullet there, the community-based solutions to domestic violence, may be an example of that. It's violence prevention and focused, instead of youth violence, focused on domestic violence. So in this last bullet, staff would propose that we return to this committee in December of this year with a research report that surveys best practices across other local governments to identify, what opportunities, maybe if the city wants to increase its focus in this area, what opportunities may be out there, and what types of service models may show promise. And so that's we look forward to coming back to the committee and reporting out on these issues, and of course continuing to partner with advocates in the Real Coalition to ensure that they have a continued voice in the way we pursue these issues. Thank you.
All done? Thank you so much for the report. We're going to go to the public. Any public comment?
Blair?
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thanks a lot for this item. It was encouraging. Yourselves are talking about policing in terms of community, in terms of reimagine. Thank you. I think the fentanyl issues of the SJPOA and chief executive manager, boy, it really changes a lot, I think. And good luck how we can more openly address such a concept. And you can see it, you could have seen it everywhere previously, that you were building a future of recruitment and policing in terms of our bright, shiny police as pillars of the community. You weren't balancing those questions enough with what exactly is Reimagine, and how does Reimagine fit into these new recruitment ideas for policing and policing departments in our community future. Important concepts, but we really have to balance the concepts of what new ideas of Reimagine can be within that. And we have to talk openly about that. And we don't know how to do that well enough yet. We only know how to focus on one small item at a time at public meetings and in our conversations. We don't know how to more broadly speak in terms of incorporating many ideas as part of the overall concepts of community and policing and watching out for each other in local neighborhoods. And just a real good luck how we can do that now. We're at a time to do that. We were at one end of the scale with Reimagine all over the place, defund, and then we went to the other end, the other extreme. And I hope we're at a time to really balance that out now and really bring in all cards on the table, how we talk about our community and our future. We are moving towards a future of less police, and the community itself can do the work. Good luck how we can do that and make that a really viable, important conversation for ourselves. Thank you.
Catherine?
Good afternoon. This is Catherine Hedges. I'm a member of Surge and Rex, and I agree with everything Blair just said. I'm really glad to hear support for the items proposed by the year-long community-led REPS committee. We need to proceed with the trial of community-based solutions for domestic violence, 911 call analysis, and local government violence prevention research. We can save money by reducing militarized hardware expenses and reducing our dependence on sworn officers for social issues. We've also noticed how many officers respond to each call. Maybe if we didn't send 6 officers to deal with one person, we could improve response times. However, I have serious concerns about the SJPD survey. I'm not sure the QR code was used effectively. The crime victim flyer didn't make it clear that the SJPD website QR code was linked to a survey. And a lot of people in your target demographics don't know how to use QR codes. I found that out trying to do stuff with the tenant union. Secondly, I have disability concerns. Was a survey even designed with different access and functional needs in mind? The survey demographics don't capture any disability data, so how is it going to capture any patterns of problematic encounters between SJPD and community members with access or functional needs? The survey questions only refer to mental health disabilities. There's nothing about communication with deaf or non-speaking people, how to treat arrestees or victims who are physically disabled or maybe medically fragile, or how to stop funneling disabled students into the school to prison pipeline. I'm also concerned that the list of priorities in question 11 on the survey assumes that all of these social problems that people are concerned about are suitable for police response. Police can't solve homelessness or treat mental health crises, even those are top public concerns. Police don't even want to respond to these calls, and we need to create other resources such as trust for them to refer these to. Thanks very much.
Paul?
Thank you. Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. A man got his testicles blown off. Clavicles were crushed. There was a sawed-off cop that was intimidating and goading and challenging and really inciting people that were exercising their constitutional right to redress their grievances against their government. And he was goading them and antagonizing them with a gun in his hand. That's what got us to this point. And then what I just heard, that's what happened. That's why we're sitting here in this meeting. And then what I heard is next door leveraged what happened to George Floyd and us watching a police officer snuff the life out of a citizen of the United States, and watch next door politicize that. And then they got granted $400,000. Wow. That is a cold hustle. That is, hey, my hat's off to you, next door, for hustling that, because it has absolutely nothing to do. What happened to George Floyd and what happened to the citizens of this city under the purview of Eddie Garcia has absolutely nothing to do with domestic violence. And I resent the fact that next door is using this and leveraging their influence with the city and their nonprofit status in order to politicize and exploit what happened to George Floyd so that they could get $400,000 in funding. That's disgusting. That is a disgusting fact, what they did. And the complicity of the police department. To the police department, I suggest you start, look, this is what I have an issue with. You guys, for 5 years, this lady conducted an international drug ring right under your nose. That means that you guys do not have the capacity to even know when a crime is being committed in your own very office. So that means the legitimacy for you to conduct an arrest is in question. I don't want a cop anywhere near me because you ain't got the...
Pancho?
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Poncho Guevara. I'm the Executive Director of Sacred Heart Community Service, and I have the honor of being able to serve on the steering committee for the Reimagining Public Safety Advisory Committee, and have be able to serve on the Race Equity Action Leadership Coalition. Just wanted to reiterate and thank the work of the City Manager's Office, being able to work with Peter and Lee on being able to advance some of these ideas. And I just want to emphasize a couple different things. In addition to our support for these three particular items that you're bringing forward, I think there is a need to really dive deeply into what are some of those alternatives that we might be able to deploy that can be more efficient for the use of precious city resources in terms of looking for alternatives, including the intimate partner violence response. Not every situation requires a law enforcement officer as well trained as we try to do with folks in terms of some of the training that that the lieutenant was actually sharing before that are planned or have already happened with the department. We don't always need to have a law enforcement officer responding to every social condition or issue that's actually happening in our community, and that's one of the things that really got highlighted during the reimagining process, the committee itself and the recommendations that we brought forward. And that's why we think it's really important that we not only do this call analysis to be able to ensure that we can actually examine really what's happening. Are these really calls for service that require an armed enforcement force of the law to be able to respond to? Are there other things that other people can actually do or other organizations can actually respond to more effectively? And last but not least, we would like to very much see a timeline that actually happens, not something that we wait for 6 months to actually get that analysis done. We're able to do that more quickly and come up with a set of solutions that could be diverted to a Office of Violence Prevention or some other kind of system, which is the third recommendation, so we can implement these ideas swiftly. Thank you.
Sandra? Sandra? You see you're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm Sandra Asher from District 10. I was a steering committee member for the Reimagining Committee and advocating for the disability community and co-founder of Safety for All. I'm glad to see the city prioritizing the 911 call analysis to identify calls that might be assigned to alternative responders. Implementing these recommendations will help ensure the most appropriate responder is paired to the needs of the caller. However, the city's response to recommendation number 439 on the spreadsheet, identifier RIPS 01AS2, is noteworthy. This recommendation calls for investing in community-based mobile crisis response, such as trust. However, the city's solution is to offer MCAT and PERT as solutions. Both these teams include law enforcement, which is counter to the recommendation. It's also interesting that the police department disagrees with over 70% of the recommendations for oversight. I urge the city council to look into why this is the case, especially when the community continues to lack trust in our police department. For many of the recommendations, the city is hiring a community engagement consultant. I'm wondering how this vendor was selected and what criteria were used. Does this vendor have any knowledge and experience working with the disability community and understanding our needs? Do they have experience with outreach and engagement with the disability community? Furthermore, I'd like to uplift the comments that Catherine Hedges made around the survey. We saw no indication that this survey will take into account the needs of the disabled community. Finally, I'm encouraged to hear about training initiatives within the department, but I'm wondering how the effectiveness of those training programs will be measured and how will you know the outcomes are in alignment with their intended purpose. Thank you.
Back to the committee.
Thank you. We have a few comments from some of the committee members. We're going to first go to Councilmember Dewan.
Thank you for the report. I wonder, I'm pretty amazed by your accomplishment by 200, I believe 54 out of the 500 recommendation in such a short period of time. That's pretty amazing. Some of these recommendations, does it come with metric to measure the success of the program? And I know every time we ask for metrics, it takes more staff time and resource, and it takes finance. And I understand that, but some of the recommendation do not need the metric, but some recommendation do need it. And if so, have the department look at very specific metric to accomplish those goals?
Thank you for that question, Council Member. It's an excellent question. There aren't a lot of matrix in the recommendations. The vast majority of the recommendations have to do with policy, have to do with the way that we direct our officers. And so I think we see the matrix on the back end, but there aren't any that I know of, unless Peter does. I don't know of any particular recommendations that require a certain matrix or a certain output, but we're hoping that we will see them. We do measure ourselves on a very regular basis. We measure crime statistics, of course. We measure our responses to calls. We measure our IA complaints and those things, and we're hoping that those numbers, that those matrix will improve as we check off items off the list.
And how many of your officers are trained towards dealing with the mentally ill citizen out there? I believe you have the 688 program.
We have a program called the CIT. It's crisis intervention training, and I think it's 100%. I think that that every single active sworn member of the department has taken the training. It's a very extensive course. It's a full week of training, and I believe that we are right at 100%.
And you coordinate with mental health professional when there's our situation involving mental illness?
Yes, currently the device that we're using the most is AMCAT, as I discussed. That's the team that is out there with special training, not only special training, but also special relationships with other members of the medical community and mental health community. They have these relationships. They know who to contact. It's just a great resource. They are almost constantly out there. They're very busy. They're going to a lot of calls, and I think it's been very effective.
And do you have a stat for that? How many calls or how many incident that you used the MCAT team?
I don't have the statistic with me, but we can provide that at a future meeting, at a future bi-monthly meeting.
I appreciate that, and just to make a comment here, as a retired captain, I've responded multiple calls with the PD and the MCAT and the police officer has evolved to a different department who more compassionate, kind, and caring and understanding about mental illness, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. We're going to go to Councilmember Torres.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Lieutenant and Peter, for that presentation. Appreciate it. Just a couple questions, actually. The LGBTQ plus awareness training, does that include trans or gender nonconforming issues?
Yeah, a large portion of it had to do with that because we've written some new policy about that, about such things as searches, such things about how to address people in that community and how to address people who are in transition, even all the way to the point of how to refer to them in a police report, rather than use whatever gender that we put on them. We make it clear who they are, because there is a reason to do that. It's important that we understand who they are and who they've been, but also at the same time, we do it in a very respectful way, that we make sure that we use the pronouns that they want. We'll specify who they are at the beginning of the report, and then throughout the rest of the report, we will use the pronouns that they want. And so it was those types of things that we included in our training. And one of the most important things about that particular issue that we wanted to stress is to not ask anybody about if they're in a state of transition. It's not something that anybody wants to discuss with us. It's not something, in the vast majority of the cases, it's not something germane to our jobs. It doesn't affect the way that we do our jobs or the decisions we have to make. And so that's one of the things that we taught our members that they may not have been aware of.
Great. Thank you, Lieutenant, for that. And this also includes gay or lesbian same sex. Can't say that because it's gender nonconforming, but gay and lesbian relationship, right? If we have situations with intimate partner violence and gay or lesbian relationships.
Yes, thanks for the question. Are you referring to the training that we provided?
Yeah, the training. Yeah, when it comes to domestic violence in a gay or lesbian relationship.
Yes, of course. We discussed that because we do go a lot of those calls. So it had to do again with being respectful of people and treating them with dignity and respect. Also, a lot of it specifically referring to the gay and lesbian community, not to be very respectful of the decisions they've made, and understand that the coming out process is a difficult one, a momentous one. In fact, part of that training was a pretty long video that featured, I believe it was 5 or 6 of our department members including, I think, at least 3 sworn members who had come out, and they were telling their story and talking about some of the difficulties they faced, not only in coming out with their families, but also being part of our department and coming out, and I think that was a very effective piece.
Great. No, I'm so glad that we're having these trainings amongst other, for other communities as well. So, just last question. MCAT, is that just for downtown San Jose or a specific area, or for all of San Jose?
No, I think they kind of base downtown. I think when they're not responding to a call, I think that's kind of where they have their base. But no, they will respond to any call across the city. If there's some indication in the call that there is a mental health crisis, they will respond to it. Thank you for that question.
Yeah. So yeah, that's because I think that's where the MCAT and the 911 call analysis comes into play, right? Because we want our MCAT folks to respond to a mental health crisis, right? Not, the other, we don't want to further stigmatize or further criminalize our unhoused, right? Or somebody who has a mental health issue, because not, everybody has mental health issues, not just our unhoused. So that's where it's going to come, right? The MCAT and the call analysis.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, absolutely. I think it starts with the dispatchers. They're trained to, and the call takers, they're trained to know when there's going to be an issue. And then that's where also the sergeants come in play. There's always a sergeant on each side of the week. We have 2 really qualified sergeants. They're really good. They're very veteran officers. They've been with the department for a long time, and they've had a lot of training. And they know what to listen for. They know, what the keywords are, even if it may not seem initially like it is a mental health situation. They key into those things, those call details, and they have their teams respond.
Okay, great. And then just with that, I want to make a motion. I want to accept item D3, but cross-reference it to the council in August. Can I do that? Yeah. In August.
Yeah. I'll second that.
Oh, it's Chairman Dolan.
Well, okay, we got a motion and we have a second. Thank you. Vice Mayor, you're up.
Thank you. You may have said it and I just missed it, but I was just curious, how do we connect with members of the Real Coalition who spent a lot of time and energy and let them know? I mean, obviously, this is an open forum in terms of it's open to the public, but really communicating with them the progress that has been made, where we are, what's going to happen. Do we do anything extra to let them know that this is where we are?
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor, for that question. We've, dating back to, I think we really started kicking it off in January of this year. We've been meeting with the subcommittee of the Real Coalition that focuses on policing. And that's, it's included the Assistant City Manager, Angel Rios, and myself. We started off in those meetings by really getting a sense of what they thought were the highest priorities from the recommendations of the Reimagining Committee. And from there, that's how we developed that list of 3 focus priorities that we presented to you today. And, as we were refining that list and we gave them, before we put it in the staff report, we ran it by them and had a follow-up meeting with them to answer questions. So I think in putting together our presentation here and our proposal to how we would focus, we've tried to coordinate very closely with them, and I think would intend to continue to do that as we implement those priorities.
That's great. I just think that it's important to engage the community and ensure that they get the information. And even though this is a public forum and anybody can join us, it's great to, sort of go the extra to have them involved. So thank you for that. I also had a question regarding the community engagement consultant. And I know that in your slide, you mentioned that you're in the final stages of the selection process. And while having expertise in community engagement, I always think that it's very valuable to be able to have someone who understands our community, right? I mean, someone from Florida may have great community engagement, sort of like best practices and all of that, but there are nuances of our community that are important to know. So I just put that out there. I know that you're going through your process, but I hope that it is not sort of a cookie cutter thing, because San Jose is unique. Not that other communities are not, but we do have our certain things. And as we look to someone who's going to help create a plan on community engagement, it isn't just a document. It isn't just, saying a few words of what works or what has worked in other communities. It is really understanding the needs on the ground. So I hope that that gets incorporated.
Thank you. We have Councilmember Batra that has some questions.
Thank you, Lieutenant. And you had extensive amount of recommendations, 536 to deal with it in a year and a half. Some departments don't get 536 recommendations in their lifetime. And so it's impressive work. And you have managed to complete 254 already. So that's another kudos. I do have a question on that there are 57 of them have been marked as will not be completed because they are not practical. Now, have you had the opportunity to discuss that with the people or the groups who recommended those, and were they satisfied with their impracticality, or were they willing to modify it slightly to make it practical?
Thank you for your question, Council Member. It's a really good question. Yes, to almost everything you asked there. First of all, we have reached out to all of the sources that gave us these recommendations and gave them explanations as to why we wouldn't be able to do them. A lot of them have to do with budget. A lot of them have to do with staffing. But we put a lot of effort into finding other recommendations that would meet those needs. And we made those explanations. And I don't think anyone's happy when they have a recommendation not agreed upon. But I think we were able to come to an agreement on virtually every one of them.
Okay. When
Councilmember, if I can just jump in as well.
Sure.
In the police department's defense, in some of these cases, the ones where we've disagreed is not just the police department, but the administration as well, either from a budgetary situation or, one of the recommendations is the department place a ballot initiative in front of the voters to tax large businesses to pay for alternatives. That's a policy call that's very specific to the city council's ability to place a ballot measure on the ballot, as well as where that funding would go. And in some cases, this council has taken policy positions, like in the state legislature, that conflict with some of these. So we've tried to communicate that out to the public as much as we can, but I did want to speak up. It's not just the police department that has said no to some of these recommendations, it's the overall administration.
Yeah, and my question is not saying that those are not the right things, so there's really not a defense issue, but I think it's more an understanding issue, because when somebody reads this report and says, okay, 11% found incompatible. All right, we make a recommendation. Who is the one who is saying it's incompatible? So you've gone through the process of trying to make it determine that it is consistent with the city of San Jose's policies, regulations, and then only implement. And that's perfect explanation for that. And the second part is that this many recommendations and implemented, they must have made an impact. How do we communicate? Are they customer visible or public visible improvements, or we need to find a way to communicate to the... There are some people who are attending Zoom, they're the very enthusiastic one, but there are a lot of them affected by these things, and they would be very happy to know that our police department is modern day police department and they're working on the right thing. How do we get that, expect to communicate and show some visible thing on that? Okay.
Thank you for that question, Council Member. Unfortunately, I think that we're not going to see most of those results overnight. I think it's going to be several years into the future. And the other thing to keep in mind is we have an incredibly young police department right now, which is good in a lot of ways because a lot of the recommendations have to do with training and also have to do with thinking about policing in a different way than I thought about it when I started 23 years ago, almost 24.
Yeah.
So that's actually a good thing. It's a good problem to have in a lot of ways. As far as going back to the matrix, we are constantly looking at statistics. We are constantly grading ourselves in how we do. A lot of that has to do with complaints. A lot of it has to do with our response to calls. And we're looking at much more of a customer service model than we ever have. But again, I don't think it's going to be something that we can just turn on and say, yeah, there it is. It's going to be things that we're going to see over time. I think it's going to be just a gradual change of culture, a gradual change in the relationship between the department and the community. I do believe we're seeing it start. I think we're seeing it beginning, but I think it's going to be several years into the future before we really get its full impact.
Okay, that's perfectly, it's going to be gradual. Okay, the last thing, we're going to be coming back in fall with alternative models or alternative ways of policing or addressing different issues. Is that the time when you're going to be addressing the one common request I see from the people is, hey, I don't need a sworn officer to be patrolling my streets. It would be great if there was some kind of a uniformed officer driving around occasionally just to keep people warned that somebody is watching them beside the cameras and all that. Is that will be even the recommendations about how to address that request will come in?
Thank you for your question. I think I need a little clarification as to...
I can jump in on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I think a few things. Obviously, Peter went over the 911 call or the calls for service data. So I think that will help us with two things from our discussions with the Real Coalition. And I do think they want to engage in who responds to a call, depending on the type of call. Is it a police officer? Is it a CSO? Is it the county, and behavioral health, quite frankly. So I think we are going to do that work. We're also doing that work in just trying to analyze our own overtime budget, quite frankly. As the courts have been backed up and officers need to spend more time in court, or state law has changed, requiring us to respond to different calls for service differently. Those overtime budgets have obviously gone up, and so we'd like to do that. And then if the budget passes, I would note, the pilot that we're going to be doing in the downtown with CSOs, kind of being more visible and driving around and having that kind of more presence to see how that works so officers can be deployed to different situations. So I think there's a few different things happening in the next year that will help us get further to that question around where we prioritize the limited resources of the department to have the best bang for the buck with the community.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, and excellent work and challenging work, and totally support the activities going on here.
Very good. Thank you for all the questions, for all the work. I have a few questions. The first question is the 911 analysis. So I see in the report that the work plan is going to be developed. So do you have a sense as to when? Obviously, I think is it funded through the budget, right? Got to go back and read it. So we expect to get the resources via the budget.
The 911
or was
call,
it the other one?
The 911 call analysis item is direction from the council through the March message. There's no budget resources attached to it. So it's staff direction that we'll implement.
Did you all have to, in those type of situations, thank you for pointing that out. I didn't think to ask that question with resources tied to it, because obviously it's going to take some work. With those type of recommendations, the staff direction, you all just find the resources, put a body on it, and do the work? Is that?
That's absolutely, when we receive direction in the March budget message, if we don't think we have the in-house capacity to do something, we would notify the council or put it in the proposed budget. But on this, we obviously have the city manager's office and policy wing of the police department to help push some of this through.
Okay, and so we don't need to wait. I mean, obviously the city manager's office, all the different departments do a host of different things, but we don't necessarily need to wait till we approve the budget to get moving on this. And so what I'm curious is, do we have a sense as to, the work plan hasn't been developed, do we have a sense as to when we would get going on this? Because what I assume is you obviously can go analyze the calls as they're coming in on a daily basis, right? An hour every minute. But I imagine we have a good amount of data that already exists. It's just a matter of combing through that and trying to figure out how we're going to sort of parse that out. So can you give me a sense as to how the timing or how long it's going to, do you guys think it's going to take? Has that evaluation been done?
No, we don't have a work plan yet, so I don't think I can give you an exact answer to that. But I can tell you we've already had discussions about planning out our approach to this and are starting to think about, certainly not waiting until the budget is adopted. We've begun figuring out how we're going to approach this issue. I would guess that we would be able to commence in the next few months. It wouldn't, it wouldn't take too long to get a work plan in place.
Right, and then do we expect that the folks that are conducting the analysis are strictly going to be from the police department, or is it going to be someone from the city manager's office? Or, and I know you don't have the work plan yet, but the reason I'm asking is what I would like to see. The reason I'm asking this is that what I would like to see is that this analysis be objective as possible, right? I'm not interested in having a police. I'm just making this up, right? Having a police officer there saying, no, all these we actually need a police officer. Right, I want someone there that can provide some objectivity and just say, maybe in this case it wouldn't have been necessary, or things of that nature, right? So that's why I asked that. Do we have a sense as to who exactly may be?
I think the way we're conceiving of it is it would be a partnership between the police department and the city manager's office working together.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. I think that was it. A few other things. I appreciated the motion. I think this wasn't set to cross-reference to the full city council, I believe. But I think that's important because this is obviously has broad public interest, and everyone's watching this and has a lot of questions as to where we are sometimes. And if they're not on this committee, they often aren't following or tracking it, even though they probably are watching the meeting. So I thought that was important. The other thing is I know some of the recommendations, about 100 and something recommendations, came from the IPA, the Independent Police Auditor, and I know that she's here in the audience watching very carefully. And so, Siobhan, I was wondering if you wanted to just share your thoughts generally on sort of where we are with things and your general sense of things. I believe I speak for the whole council and even the mayors that we hold you in high esteem in your opinion and your expertise, and so it'd be curious to sort of hear what your general thoughts are.
Thank you, Council Member Siobhan Nuri, Independent Police Auditor. I guess my overall impression is it's a very big list, and because it's such a big list, it's overwhelming to my staff, who knows a lot of these issues. I think it's a bit overwhelming to the community, overwhelming to yourselves. I'm not sure how we got to 536, because in my estimation, some of the recommendations are rather old. In my office, they went back to 1994. In my estimation, some of them have been completed some years ago, if not more than many years ago. So that's just an overall idea about the general comprehensive work plan. In terms of individual items, I know a lot of them are policy items. And I think on page 9 of Chief Mata's memo, he kind of outlines the steps that one would need to implement. And I think it would be good to know how much time it takes to do it if we're talking specifically about policy, moving through that big long page of step by step by step. Because I know they have done some. There are others waiting to be done. I have a recommendation from 2011, which indicates that police officers shouldn't cite people sleeping in their cars because it's legal to sleep in your car, and that is on the list as in progress. So
one of the recommendations your office submitted that's in the queue, if you will.
right, in 2011,
Okay.
about sleeping in cars, which it doesn't sound to me too complicated, but maybe it is more complicated. 42 of completed items are training bulletins, and while I appreciate the impact of training bulletins, officers can't be disciplined for violating a training bulletin. So some of the recommendations I've made, I would like to see the officers held accountable. Some of those in the past have been on searches of vehicles or searches, which is a constitutional principle. So although it says completed, I guess I'd have to say on those items I didn't get everything I recommended.
Right, okay, all right. Thank you for that perspective. I appreciate it. And this is one of the many reasons that I thought it was, I wasn't here when the motion was made, actually. I'm going to vote for it. But thought it was important to cross-reference it for the full council. So please.
If I can ask one question, perhaps you could ask a question. I think one of the most important items on the reforms is, and it's something I've been asking for years, is an early intervention program. And I personally don't recall where that is on the work plan. I'm assuming it is on the work plan. Yeah.
Can you just for, we have new council members, early intervention program, or can you, I have a sense as what you're referring to, but can you?
Okay, so for years, the department has relied on complaints about police officers to identify problem officers. For the last several years, they have indicated that they want to broaden and may have a more sophisticated type of identification process that includes more than just complaints, right? It would include perhaps 148 arrests, maybe arrests that the DA doesn't charge, maybe it's not showing up for work or being late, a whole host of factors. And I think the department then hired somebody, so maybe Lieutenant Hamlin can provide an update. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Can you touch on that, Lieutenant Hamlin?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. We are, as a matter of fact, I think it was about a week ago, we picked a small committee that is going to be choosing the vendor for the product that is going to, it's a very, whatever product we choose, it's going to be a very state-of-the-art product that is going to help us with all those things that she mentioned. It's not just going to be complaints. It's not just going to be certain kinds of complaints. It's going to look into things like attendance. It's going to look into a lot of things that have been identified as early warning signs of a problem. And we're in the beginning stages of it. Like I said, we've selected the people that are going to be on the committee. There is a sergeant in internal affairs that is spearheading the committee, and it's going to be selecting the product, and then we'll be implementing it.
Okay, all right, thank you. And just one thing that stood out to me as it relates to some of Siobhan's comments, I'm looking at the attachment in the report that's associated with this item for this meeting. And if you look at the just the top line for all the slides, if you will, or not the slides, but the pages, on the top it has number, source. So source, where that item came from, if you will. identifier, description, priority, type, status, hyperlink. But one of the things that I think would be informative and helpful to give us context, I think, is what if we added the referral date on there? This came from in 2011, or it was from 2019. Is that, maybe, I don't know if I'm missing it, but maybe it's in there. Or maybe it's somewhere else.
We maintain a internal spreadsheet that has maybe twice as much data as you're seeing here. So that's, and we just select which data to display for simplicity, but I'll let.
Is it possible to add the date in which
I think it would be, yes. Yeah, we have that.
Okay, so I think that'd be helpful. So when this comes back in August, I mean, you have some time, but when it comes back in August, it'd be good to have a column just with the referral date, for lack of a better word. I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, we have the referral date, I think, on all of them, if not all, most of them. And we are also, whenever we update the list, whenever we check with one of the people responsible to see how we are, where we're doing, if we've changed status on an item, we also put a date in there for the just for the update. Even if there's no change, we're putting the date in
So
there.
you're sort of keeping track of when you touch it, sort of this tickler file of sorts where you say, okay, we last updated Shimon, then we're still working on whatever, right? Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Okay. I guess if it's, it seems to me it's probably just a spreadsheet. It's just a matter of creating another sheet. So if you can add that information too, I think it'd be helpful. And I don't know if we need to add it to the, it's just, But thank you. I think that would be helpful. And I don't see any more speakers. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, and we'll go ahead and vote. And thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, it's unanimous. Thank you so much. We'll see you in August. I think those are all the items. We go to open forum, and we'll go to public comment.
Paul?
Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. You have an international drug ring for operating for 6 years right there under the nose of all these cops. And then if that wasn't good enough, you have them like lifting up their shoulders. Wow, hey, we didn't know nothing about this. How did that happen? I mean, what this says is two things. Number one, if this person was successful in doing that right under the nose of these cops, that means none of these cops know absolutely anything about what they're doing, and they all should be fired and removed. So we're not wasting our money on cops that don't know how to identify when crime is being committed right there in front of them. That's number one. Number two, if they did know, and they turned their heads and turned their backs on it, the same principle applies. We need to get to a point where there are good cops, and there absolutely is in this police department. But there's some dirty racist cops that have no business on this police force, and we need to remove them from the police force, because they have no business representing that badge. Because when you wear that badge, you swear an oath to protect me. And when you become the very means by which I need to protect myself from, then you are a danger to the community, and you need to be removed immediately. Just that's a fact. I don't want a dirty cop anywhere near me. And you know what? I can't tell one from the other, because they're all wearing the same uniform and they're all wearing the same smile. And that is a problem. This coming weekend, you're going to have lowriders on the street. If you have another issue if you have another display of what you had last time this weekend, and if one Chicano gets hurt on these streets because of these.
Blair?
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here. Thanks for the words of Paul. To think of a peer review program to expand where it currently is at with working within the domestic violence program, to return it to its initial intentions for police practices throughout the department, that can be an interesting addition. How to address what's gone on with these fentanyl issues, to have police oversight of themselves, and just better dialogue and communication can be really helpful, and for the community as well, as we're all trying to understand how the future of public oversight and oversight really needs to be considered, how we move forward. Good luck on our efforts of this and neighborhood policing. People learning to police themselves. good luck in those efforts from all of us, what we need to do to really build the future of Reimagine. It takes work and effort, and I hope we're up to the task. It's idealistic, it's hopeful and meaningful for sustainability, I feel. With my remaining time, I wanted to comment. I spoke at Tuesday at City Council, and at the end of the meeting, all the council persons were just yapping and yammering away while public comment was going on at the end of the meeting, open forum. I asked for a bit of silence and decorum. I was fully ignored, and in fact, conversation turned louder. So, when the public asks for that sort of thing, the council needs to respond in decent terms, and they need to pipe down. They need to attend the full meeting and then go on with their conversations. Sorry that I grew a little loud, but hopefully it's understood and we can work this out. Boy, I have a lot to say about Matt Mahan's housing proposals. It's a budget time. I hope from his initial ideas, we can really take to heart what Bob Brownstein offered, and we can work different strategies and ideas for the future of his housing ideas. Thanks.
Catherine?
Good afternoon. Yes, I support the previous two speakers. I am absolutely appalled by the fentanyl scandal. I have no idea how that could be happening under their nose without them noticing. And if they are lying about it, that's even worse. We need to have a full investigation and not just believe them saying, oh, we had no idea. I mean, how do you not know? Come on. And I also agree that City Council should respectfully listen to public comment, even if it's in open forum at the end of the meeting. They can have their happy hour chit chat or whatever after they leave the chambers. And however, I do disagree with the previous comments about next door solutions grabbing money unfairly. I think it makes sense not to be sending police officers to comfort distraught people and possibly escalating situations or going in and committing violence against people unnecessarily. Thanks very much.
Back to the committee.
Thank you, and we're adjourned. Have a wonderful day.